Playoffs? Yeah, playoffs in Philadelphia with a win and the Atlanta and Arizona losses. Philadelphia officially in the tournament. They will look to shake things up. Still plenty to accomplish with a potential 1 seed out in front of the Birds. In studio, Joe Musso, Emory, Hunt, Bryant, McFadden, fellas, as we take a look at the NFC playoff picture, and I think we're going to look at that picture in just a moment, but off the top here, it's an Eagles team that will now be a part of that conversation, Mac. They come away with a win. However, it was not emphatic, but it seems like a team lying one level below the surface. The Lions taking up all that oxygen, and even the NFC North race, maybe even a little bit louder than Philadelphia. This team right now can beat anybody in the NFL. What impresses you most?
Just their physical style that they have displayed. We already knew this was a talented offensive line, but they become one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League when they have Saquon Barkley behind him, because Saquon Barkley is clearly the most talented running back in the NFL today. But outside of that, Emory, Joe, the job that we've seen from Vic Fangio on the defensive side has been overly impressive as well. I mean, you look at their guys, Jalen Carter is the best interior lineman in the game, in my opinion, right now. He's disruptive on every level of their defense in terms of run pro, stopping the running game, and then putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks or collapsing the pocket. He is the catalyst for their success. So you look at what they've done defensively, all 3 levels. Zach Baum has been an unbelievable player for them. You look at Cooper DeJean, you look at Quinyon Mitchell, some young up-and-coming superstars that have really emerged to be a really good team. Their style of play will travel in postseason play. When you can run the football and stop the run, you will have more than a fighting chance.
It's all the hallmarks of playoff football. Let's take a look at that playoff picture as it goes Lions, Eagles, and I think those are the 2 measuring sticks right now to everybody else and relative to one another, Emory. I know we'll hopefully get to measure them against one another late in season, Lions and Eagles, but Eagles the more complete football team right now in your eyes?
I believe so, because here's why. I think the X factor that we're not talking about is Jalen Hurts, and what we saw today, Jalen Hurts take off and run looking like a Jalen Hurts that is not injured that we saw last year. He wasn't running as much, and we talk about chunk plays, not the the push touchdowns that he's getting. And when you talk about the 3rd element of the team, quiet is kept. Philly has some outstanding returners. They drafted well in that regard. Brett Colby, they also have Will Shipley, so they can also return the ball and win that 3rd element of the game. So I like how they're playing in all 3 facets. Detroit is solid too, but I think if you look pound for pound, the Eagles are healthier. Detroit is very good, but the X factor, in my opinion, would be the guy that has done it on a collegiate level, and then we've seen him do it to a Super Bowl, and also Goff has done it well, but I like Hurts in that matchup.
We also just saw Green Bay, not in terms of total yardage, but in moments run very effectively against that Lions defense. Saquon Barkley, that offensive line, can run against just about everybody. You better get that run stop shored up if you are the Detroit Lions wanting to do something special. This season, you also have a receiver room that is towing on the side of unhappy for the Eagles. Some stuff post-game from A.J. Brown. It didn't feel like a win in front of A.J. Brown's locker, but a win is a win, and they find another one here. The Bucs also find another win. They string them together. Atlanta loss as well. You add those 2 things up. It's now a Tampa Bay team that's leading that division down south, Emory. Everybody's saying, oh, you want to be the 5 because you're going to get that 4. It is the most likely opponent that you're looking for if you're coming out of that wild card, but is that a Bucs team we're maybe overlooking when you project them to the playoffs?
It's tough because they have a tougher task to the postseason when you think about what's happening in that division. The Saints are not out of that division, and you look at the Saints have a chance to ruin Christmas for a couple of teams. Washington they play. They also take on Green Bay and Tampa Bay at the end of the season. Now the Bucs have to go on the road to the Chargers. They have to go on the road to Dallas. They have to play a very tough Carolina team that we've seen be competitive. Then they travel to New Orleans. Atlanta goes to Vegas, plays the Giants, Commanders, and Carolina. So Atlanta, even though they lost a day, still are in it, but the Bucs have the ace and O because they swept, the Falcons swept the Bucs. So the Bucs have to go out there and win out the rest of the way.
It's that all-important half game. You said the word there, and it always rings in my mind when we watch him play football, competitive. Baker Mayfield, the competitor. Do you see him, regardless of situation? I mean, he lost his top 2 wide receivers and still took this team back to the top of the division. Do you see that competitive nature allowing his team to fumble this division lead, Mac, or is this where they're going to stay?
I think they're going to stay there, but to Emory's point, they have a tougher task. I think the next ball game is against the Chargers, who is playing the Chiefs, right? And you look at moving forward, when you have the Chargers, you have Dallas, you have Carolina, you have New Orleans. The Chargers is the most intriguing matchup because that's a playoff caliber team. You have to go out to the Chargers. Outside of that, Dallas, Carolina, New Orleans, by that time, who knows what they're fighting for, if anything, at any given chance. So with Baker, you have a fighting chance because, to your point, Joe, without Chris Godwin, without Mike Evans, he still kept this team afloat. And I think he will continue to do so. I'm more concerned about Atlanta because I trust Baker Mayfield more so than I trust currently Kirk Cousins.
Easily.
And that's not a good sign.
We will see if there is a change up there at quarterback in Atlanta. You know, on the outside, plenty calling for it. Wonder what that conversation will be this week on the inside in those Atlanta facilities. We also get a Seahawks team that take down the Cardinals, a massive moment there, but LA does keep pace with them with a win of their own. Mac, when you look at Seattle, so often for these last few years, it's been inconsistency that's been the hallmark of their game. It's a consistent football team right now. Does that have you feeling differently about what they might look like as a playoff team?
Yeah, no question, because they got a nice lead on the rest of the teams in their division. I think the second best team would be the Rams because, you know, winning against Buffalo this weekend was great. They're playing inspired football. But for the Seahawks, they're thriving right now. Number one, they're healthy on either side of the football field. The offensive line is healthier. The defensive line is healthier. They're a better team when they have those studs on the front, in the front. They put their hand in the dirt. And Zach Charbonnet, you look at the two-headed monster they have in the backfield with Kenneth Walker when he's healthy along with Zach Charbonnet. You know they got dudes that can catch the passes, they have everything. They got wide receivers. Noah Fant is no slouch at the tight end position. The offensive line has been really, really good when healthy. They got running backs. The defensive line led by Leonard Williams is a dog. When you look at Weatherspoon in the back end along with Tweak Willard, they got dudes up and down their team. They just been dealing with the injury bug. They have gotten healthy at the most important time. That's why we're seeing the best football being played by this Seahawks team.
Yeah, I agree. And defensively is where they made the biggest step forward because they're now starting to stop the run. They're turning the ball over. They're aggressive. They're making big plays, game-changing plays. So now if you're an offensive guy, if you're Geno Smith and those receivers, you don't feel pressed to go out there and have to win the game. You can just play your part, do your 111, and the defense has done a great job of not only in times getting you the ball back, but turning the ball over, stopping these guys from moving down the field. And we've seen the offense do a great job of complementing their defense, paying it forward by scoring points. So they're playing balance right now. Them and the Rams are playing the best ball in the division.
Yeah. Questions will obviously get answers in time. Emory Hunt and Bryant McFadden offering some in the here and now. Back on HQ as we turn our attention to the AFC playoff picture. With a name like Wright, you knew it wasn't wide left. Instead, it's off that left upright, and Wright was right in this case. Matthew Wright from 31 yards, giving the Chiefs their 9th consecutive AFC West title. And with that, a massive win in the AFC playoff picture. Joe Musso, Emory Hunt, Bryant McFadden here to take a look at that playoff picture, fellas. Big win at number 1, big loss at number 2. Let's start with the Chiefs. What did this day and this win mean towards that ultimate effort, Mac? And do you feel any better than you did at the start of the day about the Chiefs?
Well, the Chiefs, of course, you know, they find ways to win. I feel the same about the Chiefs. When you look at playing against a team in their division, recent history has shown all of us they find ways to win. So it's not about what the other teams are not doing. It's about the Chiefs just doing what they've been doing thus far with Pat Mahomes. So in terms of the Chiefs, I mean, I think they're going to be in a position where they will control their own destiny. And things might get a little dicier the rest of the way. They have some intriguing games coming up. But right now, sitting in the catbird seat, you have to like their chances. The teams that I'm looking for when you look at the playoffs picture, the team the Chiefs beat tonight, the Chargers.
Yeah.
The Chargers, for me, they're 8-5, but I don't trust them for some particular reason. I don't know why. You look at their defense, they have some guys on the defensive level that have been outstanding thus far. Justin Herbert is playing really, really good football. But the rushing game has really dropped off, especially since losing J.K. Dobbins. Do they have the pass catchers outside of Ladd McConkey that can come up big time in critical moments? I have my concerns. That's why I believe losing today, and you look at what they have going the rest of the way, currently being 8-5, Tampa next week, a team that has really been playing inspired football. Then you have the Broncos, you have New England, you have the Raiders. The next 2 ball games will determine if the Chiefs, if the Chargers, in my opinion, will find a way to keep a seat in the tournament or squander it away to maybe a team on the outside looking in like Miami or the Colts.
You can have personnel issues, you can have detail issues, but you can't have them at the same time. And it seems like they have a little bit of both right now, and it's holding them back from ultimately maybe what they can be down the road. Emory, let's get back to the Chiefs here. When you look at 12-1, you are what your record is, but where are your reservations following this most recent win off and upright?
Well, how will they respond if they get punched in the mouth first? So you think about some of the teams that can give them problems potentially. We saw Buffalo beat them. We saw the Ravens come a toe short from pushing that game into overtime, and they were going to go for 2 in that case as well. So those 2 teams pose a huge threat. Pittsburgh, because of how they play that downward pressure defense and how they play with balance. They're like the other version of the Midwest version, or they've all in the Midwest, like of the Chiefs, because they don't beat themselves.
Yeah.
And so those 3 teams give the Chiefs the biggest problem. So coming through Arrowhead or coming through their stadium is going to be a good thing for them to have at home. But, man, how healthy is going to be Harrison Butker moving forward? That's a big question. If they can't kick those long field goals, then Mahomes is going to have to go even further to drop the football. So that worries me about Kansas City. But the fact that they don't beat themselves doesn't worry me at all, because they are built for this. We've seen this done time and time again.
A month between now and season's end, maybe they do find a little bit of momentum, but it's not one of those teams that's sprinting home and you feel like, man, maybe they don't want the bye. This is a team that can use that bye, get right with the body. Hollywood Brown will have to check in on his availability, as they said, maybe keep an eye on him come playoff time. They could use some more pieces for that offense as well. When we take a look at the Bills, a massive loss here in a shootout. The defense doesn't show up, cancel it on Matthew Stafford, and that offense. Josh Allen plays spectacular. But now you're not just looking up at the top overall seed, you're looking down right there at the 3 seed and a live Pittsburgh team, Mac. How do you look at those 2 teams relative to one another, Buffalo and Pittsburgh?
Well, for Buffalo, I said this before, in terms of all the teams that are sitting at the top of the division, I believe the Buffalo Bills need home field advantage more so than a Kansas City, more so than a Pittsburgh, more so than Houston, because the elements that present itself when you play in Buffalo. We just saw the frigid conditions over a week ago, Sunday Night Football, against the San Francisco 49ers, and how it hampered San Francisco compared to helping the Bills.
You get a helmet, shoulder pads, and a shovel.
Yeah, most teams don't want to play there. I played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, where it gets extremely cold. But if you told me I can either pick and go to Buffalo late January or play elsewhere, I can care less where elsewhere is. I'm picking that option because it does something to you. When you go to Buffalo, their 20-degree weather hits differently than most places' 20-degree weather, not to mention the wind and the snow. So if you're Buffalo, losing today made things extremely dicey in terms of you chasing the Kansas City Chiefs and then allowing Pittsburgh to be right there on your heels. And then outside of what happened today in Los Angeles, next week you're on the road again against Detroit. And you look at the success that Sean McVay offensively had against Buffalo. Maybe they opened the Pandora's box in terms of how to be successful against the Buffalo Bills. You don't try to run east and west. You go north, you go south, you go down the teeth of their defense. Well, if you haven't paid attention to the Detroit Lions, you look at their running game with Sonic and Knuckles. They come right down the teeth of your defense. Let's see, can they correct their wrongs, basically what showed up against the Rams.
You want to talk about a through line to those two things, a controlled environment there in L.A., a controlled environment in Detroit, fast track. Maybe we take a look at those Allen numbers heading into that game, but will it add up to a victory? When you look at Buffalo right now, what do they need to sort over these next handful of weeks to make sure they are headstrong heading into the playoffs, whether it's home field advantage or not?
Well, for Buffalo, they remind me of a basketball team where you're talking about, points and pace of play, right? They want to play back and forth.
Possessions.
Exactly. All the possessions. Had the Rams just kind of slowed the ball game down and shrunk the ball game, it would have been a double-digit win for Los Angeles. But because they went match score for score, Buffalo was like, okay, we get the ball back, we're going to go down and score. So when you factor in them playing a team like, the Chiefs, or a team like the Steelers that will try to dictate the terms. And we saw them beat the Chiefs where? In Buffalo. To your point, we saw them beat the Ravens, albeit 2 separate teams, in the postseason in that windy, crazy game, playoff game in Buffalo. So if they can go on the road and play really well, the only team that went up there and beat them in the snow was Cincinnati under Josh Allen. So, I see Buffalo having to get better on defense more so than offense. Because offense, they want to track meet. Defense, they need to find a way to slow down and not allow teams to drive them into the field and get off the field on 3rd down.
If we could take a look at that graphic once again, most notably that in the hunt group shrunk mightily. Now just 2 teams in the hunt, with the Colts and the Miami Dolphins mathematically still in this thing. And it's a Colts team coming off the bye. It's a Dolphins team coming off a victory. Who's the real hunter between those two as they try and track down one of those 8-5s, Emory?
The Indianapolis Colts, guys. And here's the thing. Obviously, every game is tough in the NFL. But if you look at Indy's trek. They got Denver, Tennessee, the Giants, and Jacksonville. Juxtaposed to what Denver has, they have Indy, the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Chiefs. So this game essentially is a play-in game for Denver and Indy, because Miami is also hovering around there as well. But for Indianapolis, and we saw them get that tough win against the Patriots. We saw them come back against the Jets. So now they've opened up the door to, hey, we have the confidence of winning these close games. We can make a run. The schedule sets up nicely for them. The Giants game, Jacksonville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
You kind of have to like the Colts' chances. If they can get past Denver, who I think is better than the Chargers, because we've seen the Broncos handle success and handle the moment. We haven't seen the Chargers handle the moment, but I like the Colts here.
And I'm right there with you in terms of the Colts being that potential outside team currently being able to get inside more so than Miami, because you talked about the schedule and how favorable it is for the Colts. Get this for Miami. You have Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and the final game, granted, it's against the Jets, it's up in MetLife. It's probably going to be at least 40 degrees or lower. And Dolphins don't do well in cold weather in terms of football play based on what we've seen. So if you're Miami, the Jets won't have anything to play for. But just being in those conditions and not knowing exactly how things can happen in a rivalry type game with divisional foes, that's a tough out. So with Houston, you know, they're still trying to find a way to get back on the right track coming off a bye. They should be energized. The same can be said for San Francisco, who's fighting for their life as well. So the Miami Dolphins, they have a more difficult task the rest of the way compared to the Colts, which should actually help the Colts' chances to get into the playoffs. But to your point, this week, both teams coming off a bye, the Colts and the Denver Broncos, either a team will gain traction or one team will create separation. Let's see how it plays out.
Colts and the Dolphins still on the graphic. It's not where you want to be, but there are worse places. Emory Hunt, Bryant, McFadden, always great to be by your side. Here's a look at those big matchups coming in Week 15. We are coming down the home stretch. You better bring your best. Bills and Lions, 4:25 on CBS. Steelers and Eagles. We know that's going to have max attention. And then the Bucs and the Chargers also in that evening window, 4:25 Eastern. Big time football coming in Week 15.